Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо.
Dear colleagues, we continue work at UCMC, and the next topic is forced disappearances in Ukraine, point of destination, foreign torture rooms. Our speakers are Anvar, Derkach, Maksym, Butkevych, Nazokat Pulatova, and Igor, Skalko. Welcome. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. We are speaking today about a hot topic. This topic appeared a long time ago, and the actuality of this topic is really high. I am Maksym Butkevych, coordinator of Without Borders project. This month will have 15 years of our work. And we are dealing with refugees, and we provide consultations to people. People search refuge in Ukraine, and a couple addressed us. They came from Uzbekistan, first to Russia, then they came to Ukraine. They were persecuted because of their political and religious beliefs. First, they tried to find some peaceful place in Russia, but the Russian Federation, they send those people back to Uzbekistan. That's why they came here to Ukraine. Alisher, Khaidarov, and Nazokat Pulatova. They asked refuge in Ukraine to be provided with the status of refugee, and they got rejections. And then before 2014, 100% of refugee claims were rejected. Of those to those countries who came from authoritarian countries, and the situation remains. I here have the documents, those rejections from the central bodies of power, of executive power, that were responsible, from the State Committee on Nationalities and Religions, from a migration service, to provide Alisher Khaidarov with the status of refugee. They didn't explain the reasons, but the reason is that they said that nothing threatens him in Uzbekistan, and all the threats are not true. And this case was filed to the court, and the court also rejected the claim. I have a copy of the document. In the court judgment, it is said that nothing threatens him. He was in the safe country, in the Russian Federation, and he could ask refuge in the Russian Federation. And people who know the situation in Russian Federation concerning refugees, this looks not good. And these people were in the dead corner in legal terms, and they had to live in Ukraine, and they lived in Ukraine for 10 years until October 2020. Then Nazokat Pulatova sent a message to me that their father was kidnapped. He came from Kiev Oblast to Mykolaiv. He wanted to go back, and then some unknown people took him out of his vehicle, where he traveled as a passenger. He was brought to another car, and he disappeared. No connection. In several days, it appeared that he is in the prison in Uzbekistan, in Tashkent town. We tried to find out what happened during this time and why he is not in Mykolaiv but in Tashkent, and who participated in all of this. It took several months, and we are going to speak about this today. For us, it is really important that this case be investigated and those who are guilty should be brought to justice. This is not the first case like this, and we believe that if proper steps are not made, this won't be the last case. I should say that his children, his wife, Nazokat, and 4 children, they remain in Ukraine without a breadwinner because he supported his family, and they are under threat because Nazokat, she is here with us today. She is the victim, and this position is the position under threat. Alisher Khaidarov, and this happened to him, and me and my colleagues believe that publicity is the only weapon because we are not able to resolve this in a legal way. It's not enough to resolve it only legally. This is not the only case like this. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Derkach. Please, you are given the floor. Good afternoon. Salam alaikum. I would like to add to what Maksym said. I would like to add one story that happened with our compatriot Rahmedin Saparov. He was serving a sentence in accordance with the court decision in Poltava colony of general regime. While being there, he addressed our organization. He asked for help. He understood that extradition may have place, and he was wanted, and he understood what awaits him there. And the compatriots of Rahmedin said that in Uzbekistan, the parents of this man, they were interrogated by the security services, and they demanded that they asked that he return to Uzbekistan. Alisher, Rahmedin, they are nearly in the same situation. They were deprived of legal assistance. They were isolated from their relatives of the world and lawyers from any information. And in some time, in 1.5 months, some video footage appeared where they recognized their guilt. We believe, and Ukrainians believe that this is groundless. Alisher said that he wanted to admit some person to hospital, but special services officers believed that those people who were treated terrorists, and Rahmedin Saparov, he went somewhere, he fell ill, then returned, and he didn't do anything, but he had some alleged intentions. And the special services, security services of Uzbekistan believed that there was some alleged intent, like in anti-utopias of known authors. Alisher case, we may say, if this would be the only case, maybe we would say that this is bad situation, some unfair officers in Ukraine together with the Uzbekistan counterparts, that they committed such a crime. But this should be identified by court. Now we have events where there are evidence of crime, but we see that there is a trend. There are 2 cases, and there is a dangerous trend. We should take into account that 2 years ago, Timur Tuvngoev was extradited to Russia. In 2020, to Moldova, Ruslama Kiev was sent us. So there is a dangerous tradition and a trend to extradite people to countries where they face the threat. And international human rights organization believe that Uzbekistan, after Karimov's death, remains the country where the human rights are systemically violated, and people suffer from fabricated cases and long sentences and torture. And Ukraine undertook obligations not to extradite people to such countries, to not extradite as refugees. So in this case, Ukraine violates international obligations. And for what, we may ask? We may speak about human trafficking. We believe there are grounds to say this, but at what level it happens? When Tugoi was extradited, Prosecutor General Lutsenko said that Ukraine believes that those who flee from Ukrainian justice to Russia, we hope to get them from Russia, and we should provide we should show our readiness to cooperate with them in such a savage way. And this person was tortured and sentenced to 18 years to strict regime. I'm speaking about Tugoyev in this case. And the people are kidnapped, taken out from taxi. Alisher Khaidarov or Rakhmedin Saparov was kidnapped from the colony. The lawyer came to see him, the lawyer that was provided by our organization to him. And he addressed for the refuge, Rakhmedin Saparov, and he addressed Migration Service of Ukraine. And unknown people in black uniform came to the colony on the day of his release, and in several days he was in Uzbekistan. So there is a systemic work concerning kidnapping of people who try to flee from a dictatorship in Uzbekistan. And Maksym mentioned that Alisher, together with his wife, they came to Ukraine fleeing from Russia. They didn't came directly from Uzbekistan. They came from Russia, because in Russia the situation is like this. FSB provide carte blanche to the Uzbekistan counterparts to bring refugees. So the special services officers come from Uzbekistan to Russia, and the FSB provides them green corridor, and they bring people, they torture them, they sentence them. And Alisher and his wife were trying to flee from the situation, and in 10 years, now all these actions happen in Ukraine, and this confirms that special services of post-Soviet countries, these are twins, these are children or grandchildren of Soviet KGB. They have the same methods, the same approaches, the same practices. Despite 7 years of war between Russia and Ukraine, they cooperate closely, this FSB and SPU, and we are speaking about persecutions against the refugees from Uzbekistan. So I will continue later on. Now I will give the floor to Maksym. We will speak about the previous cases and about current situation.
I would like to add, I mentioned that Alisher Khaidarov was rejected from political shelter, but under pretext that there was no threat to him. But actually, those people who rejected to deliver any political asylum to him, they now observe that he resulted in what he was afraid of. The second problem, which was faced by the asylum seekers in Ukraine, they face extraditions in a form of deportation. Actually, they are they are given directly into the hands of those people from whom they try to fled from their countries. And the third, which again we observed with Alisher, he was simply kidnapped. It looked like Ukraine was in the role of the deserted land where just hunters, human hunters on human beings came and kidnapped him. And from the national interest protection point of view, it is very shameful that we are enabled to grant security to those people who are asylum seekers in Ukraine. And actually, Alisher's wife, Nazokat, I have stayed alone with four kids, and as you can see, you have nobody to leave these kids when she is here on the stage. Nazokat, would you please describe what happened last year? Good afternoon. Back in 2010, in May, we arrived from Russia. I came 10 days left him, and immediately we submitted all the necessary documents to get the status of asylum seekers in Ukraine. And 2 times we were rejected from the status of asylum seekers, and the pretext was that in the past he had the previous wife in Uzbekistan, and this marriage was considered as effective marriage, and multiple marriage is prohibited in Ukraine. And then later on he became ill. He had complications because of his illness, and he was unable to work. Then in 2014, the conflict in Ukraine started, and people from Chechnya who participated in volunteering forces, and they my husband did not participate in the military actions. He only volunteered for the sake of Ukraine. This is his document certificate that he participated in voluntary activity. He stayed in Donetsk and helped people there and delivered humanitarian aid. Then he became a bit better with his health, and continued to work. By September or October 2014, he remained there. Then on October 1st, he traveled from Donetsk to Mykolaiv, and during that last call, he told me that he had negotiated a transfer in BlaBlaCar, and he would arrive in several hours, but he never came. And later on, his mother called and told me that Alisher came back to Tashkent. In a month, we hired a lawyer. The lawyer was rejected from my visit for a long time, and when he managed to meet Alisher said that he was taken there voluntary, and that he was delivered a good lawyer from the state. But later on, when a lawyer, our lawyer, met with him, he only said one phrase: "I was kidnapped," and without further details. On February 2nd, a lawyer met with him, and now he is in a prison, and during a meeting with a lawyer, he explained to him the following story. In that early October, the special service officers stopped my taxi and forced me to sit in their car, and they had the Uzbek passport, my passport, with them. They immediately took me to Belarus border. That special service officers took him to Belarus, where the Uzbekistan special service officers waited for him. I have a big doubts which passport, Uzbek passport, he had, while his national Uzbek passport remained with us. Here is his Uzbek passport. When we left Uzbekistan, there were no biometric passports in Uzbekistan, and I am very much curious how the special service officers have got the biometric passports, which he never had. And in biometric passport, there was a stamp that he left Uzbekistan in late September. In early October, he left Ukraine. Allegedly, he left Ukraine voluntarily. I would like to explain more to our spectators this certificate. I'm looking at this certificate of a volunteer. He helped people who remained in Donetsk. No, he did not stay, of course, in Donetsk. He permanently lived at home. He left for business trips, but to help people who lived in Donetsk. His authentic passport is here. It is not biometric passport, and there is a big question. How did he get biometric passport from we had submitted biometric data in Ukraine because he had foreign biometric passport. And nobody knows who entered Ukraine with his passport on September 28th. And yeah, all that doubtful events that happened after the disappearance. We have Igor Skalko, who is a lawyer of Nazokat Pulatova. He is with us via Skype, and Igor, can you hear me? Good afternoon. As you mentioned, in this case, I represent the interests of Nazokat. The situation is rather simple. After many talks with the interested parties, I understand, and I've got the following understanding. Partially, this could be proved by evidences in the criminal case, which is now under investigation. But the picture looks as follows. When Alisher's family arrived to Ukraine and made attempt to get a status of the asylum seekers and was not given that status, Alisher had only the way out to go back either to Russia or to Uzbekistan. He made an attempt to get the Ukrainian documents that person in the migration service assisted Alisher in getting a passport, including the foreign passport which was mentioned, but the official response from the migration service official answer is that he was not given such documents. What does this suggest? That those documents perhaps were illegal. He crossed the border with the Uzbek passport. He crossed the border with the Uzbek passport in a car with somebody, and nobody knows who was that the second person. And our border guards and Belarus border guards, of course, do not respond to our lawyer requests. As Nazokat mentioned, the Uzbek passport remains with her, and nobody knows how he crossed the border. When that foreign passport was issued to him, they paid money, and of course that passport was got illegally. Some 2 years ago, people those who issued that false passport to him started to bother him and request money, $25,000. This was requested by a person working in the migration service, and Alisher rejected to pay that money. And in response to that, that person from the migration service said, "We would sell you to Uzbekistan." Before going to Mykolaiv, he met with somebody, and that meeting was devoted to the discussion about documents. After that meeting, he came back home very sad and depressed, and very soon he was kidnapped. And I will describe the nuances how the case is being investigated. It required from us a lot of effort to find who's responsible for investigation, and it was extremely difficult to get access to the investigating judge and to get the materials of this case. And we have found that within several first days, the case was investigated extremely actively, and the major evidences were collected during this first several days when the case was under proactive investigation. The taxi driver was interrogated, and this interrogation was done by the leader of this investigation, and that taxi driver described that the taxi was forced to stop, and people from the minibus showed them the SBU documents. They kidnapped Alisher from the taxi. I requested information from the tax company. He tried to escape from the answering, and actually the investigating bodies later have got such vague answers to the previously clear questions. I'm looking at the materials of this case, the documents of this case, and I clearly see that there is an entry in the registration book in a police station. When an applicant mentioned that Alisher started a trip, and that trip was never finished, and that passenger was detained by the SBU officers, and taxi driver was prevented from calling to police. Here I'm describing the October 4th when he was kidnapped. On October 5th, you find no references to SBU officers, which means that within one day, SBU officers managed to clean up the documents. Can you imagine that a person is kidnapped by whom? By special services of Uzbekistan and took to the Belarus border. Actually, this shows that the officers who had power, they simply sold the person who rejected to pay bribe to the government officials for illegal actions. When I joined the case, as a representative of Nazokat, I immediately produced a rather broad request to the investigator, where I requested for specific actions, and I supplemented this request with the document with the birthday certificate of Alisher's children, and some of these kids, they are Ukrainian citizens because they were born in Ukraine and registered as Ukrainians, and I requested him to recognize Nazokat Pulatova as a victim in this case. And 2 days ago, I spoke to the investigator. Expressed doubts that perhaps, yes, perhaps Nazokat Pulatova will be recognized as a victim in this case, and upon recognition of Nazokat as a victim, she would become able to apply to the DBR, and because as of now, we all our requests to the consulate of Uzbekistan and other bodies, they remained without response. Only the Belarus officers answered. They answered that it falls not within our competence. Please apply to the Ministry of Justice. But even those documents which are available to us, for us, it becomes clear that Alisher had passed the customs office, the passport controlling point, and crossed the Belarus border. And those evidences were clearly collected and absolutely collected within first 3 days upon disappearance and kidnapping of Alisher. Then we definitely know that he took the plane from Minsk to Tashkent. We approached to the airport and requested information from them, and we found that there was such a flight, and perhaps it was a charter flight because the flight was registered as a freight, as a cargo flight, not as a passenger flight. I have available an interrogation of a witness who was interrogated, but the reasons for interrogation are not understandable because it had to stay far away from the route of Alisher. But quite recently, I have found that he shoot on video the moment of kidnapping when the microbus with SBU officers stopped a taxi, and that person was able to tell the car number, registration number of a car, and that car looked suspicious, and that attracted attention of that witness, and he shoot actually on camera what happened, but unfortunately they noticed that brand new luxury car had a very old number plate and registration plate, and they checked with the registration office and found that that was a wrong plate, a number plate, and actually this again shows that here in this case we deal with the very bright example of kidnapping and human trafficking, actually, for commercial purposes. And when we will not find any justice here in Ukraine, we will go to the European Court on Human Rights. The passport that was shown by Alisher at the border, it is the passport which was issued to Alisher here in Ukraine is absolutely not true, and which actually became the pretext for bribing and actually he is a citizen of Ukraine. It's not his fault that he was issued a false passport by Ukrainian state and state official, and he had the passport, he had the ID code, he paid taxes, and actually he is a Ukrainian citizen, and now Ukraine has to defend its citizen who was kidnapped, who was taken to Uzbekistan. Unfortunately, I suspect that this is quite widespread situation, and perhaps there are many such cases. As a lawyer, I suspect that the scale of this phenomena is large, and SBU officers quite often act this way. So they are limited, of course, in their actions, but on illegal actions, but on the same time, they can blackmail the victims of their own unlawful actions. I have negative examples of that when the pack of documents was lost by the migration service or special services here in Ukraine, and then they bribed the victims and forced them to pay $150 each month. And today, when we see what's going on in Russia and Belarus, we may expect that this may happen also in Ukraine.
Thank you, Igor, for this detailed take. So we had some problems with the mic. So you came into really fine details, and they are really disturbing, and this is a sad picture that you see your task as preparation of the documents for European Court on Human Rights, and it is clearly seen from your speech. But I have a small hope that Ukrainian investigative bodies be able to do something, because 4 months have passed since Alisher was kidnapped, and today, the 4th, we have 4 months, and his wife was not recognized as a victim in the case. So this is about the investigation of the case. I would like to say about the investigation. This is not the first case. In April 2016, there was a citizen of Uzbekistan who addressed us to the Without Border Project. This person was kidnapped by unknown persons he was kidnapped from Kiev. Then before this, he accepted some threats from Uzbekistan. He was heavily beaten, and some people tried to bring him out of Ukraine, but he was able to flee, and he got some treatment, and now he is in the safe country, but we cannot say his real name. He was under nickname Abdullah in Ukrainian media, and they tried to bring him through Belarus border. He fled in Chernigov, and this was a very bright example, and cases were filed and criminal investigation was started, but nothing was done. And if something was done, maybe we would not have other cases. If nothing is done in this case, Alisher and Rahmiddin, these are people who were extradited to countries, to the countries where they will be tortured, and this is prohibited by international conventions on torture, or if they are persecuted in those countries, and these are under the agreements of 1951. So this story is so long. It started in the previous century, and Uzbek journalist Muhammad Jamjan, he spent 18 years in prison, and he was sent to prison in 1999, and he was extradited to Uzbekistan, and then there was a number of number of extraditions, and the person from Anna Politkovska article He was extradited to Russia and tortured there. And in 2006, dear PCC from Palestine, Leonid Rozvazhayev, from Russia. This happened before 2014, and the Ukrainian power, they had friendly relations with authoritarian regime, and we hope that we have less of this now. And I mentioned Abdullah after there was abduction attempt. I would like to name some people starting 2016 until now. September 2016. Aminat Babayeva from Russia. She was sent to Russian Federation despite her claim for refuge. 2018, Yusufinan Yusalih is a journalist from Turkey and businessman from Turkey. They were extradited. One of them was kidnapped and brought to Turkey. September 2017, Timur Turguev extradited to Russian Federation and tortured there. December 2019, in Versailles to Azerbaijan for political reasons. September, a person from 14th, Alisher Khaidarov, 19 December, Ahmedin Saparov. Anvar told us about him. 6, Semir Gudir, Sagim Fidan, teachers in Gun schools. They were extradited to Turkey. So these are the main cases that are mentioned by us. These are 10 people in 5 years. These people were kidnapped, extradited, and maybe there were some more cases not presented in the media. Something should be done about it. Alisher Khaidarov case should be dealt with properly, and there should be proper security for Nazokat Pulatova and her children. She is a victim in the case. She is under threat. She is vulnerable. And also those people who try to find refuge in Ukraine, we should provide security for these people because Ukraine has such obligations. If some people are guilty of any crimes, there is a procedure for them to defend themselves. And it is prohibited to extradite people to those countries where they will be tortured. So Ukraine has proper obligations for this, and you do not see the whole now. You see us only, watch us only online. We do not have Q&A session. We end our event. I would like to give the floor to Anvar Derkach for the final words. I would like to mention one name. The people Maksym mentioned, they were extradited, they were tortured, they were treated inhumanely. The majority of them are sentenced based on fabricated cases. And I would like to name a person, Narzullah Khunjonov. This is an elderly person, Uzbek journalist. He was detained in Ukraine. He spent 2 months in Lukyanev pre-trial detention facility, and then due to journalists and human rights defenders, he was released, and he got the status of refugee in Ukraine. This is a unique case. And he is here with his family, with 5 kids, and he gets threats from Uzbek security service. His family is persecuted here morally, and he has grounds to address international organizations with a request for him to go to a third safe country. This is problematic, but this is a person who we are able to save, and this is the refugee Jonah. This should be a turning point after this the situation with the rights of those who fled those countries. We hope that situation will turn for the better for them, and we will work for this. Thank you very much, Anvar. Unfortunately, our time is up. I would like to thank Anvar Derkach, Nazokat Pulatova. I would like to thank all those who participated and will participate in order to provide justice in this case. Those previous years, we had another list, and it is more happy. Those people who were helped by human rights defenders and activists, international organizations, these illegal actions against them were stopped, and Ukraine should implement its international obligations. It should not support authoritarian regimes that want to come and take anyone they want, and this is unacceptable. And Ukraine should become at least relatively safe for the refugees. In the north and in the south, and there are some authoritarian dictatorship regimes that use torture massively. They persecute their political and religious opponents, and they try to take people out of here, and Ukraine should not help these regimes. Events in Belarus and in Russian Federation now show that many people, due to their political views, and unfortunately these people will need refuge in other countries. And Ukraine shows that it is not a safe country for such people. We should restore justice in case of Alisher Khaidarov, Rahmin Saparov, and other people. And at the end, I would like to say that, as I know, Ukrainian government got official letter from the working group of UNO on forced disappearances counteraction, and it demands to explain what happened to these people, and we are also interested. This is not only of interest to UNO, this is of interest to us and to Ukrainian people. So thank you very much for watching, and